Hi, this is Evangelist Vicki Chester again of Rivers of Living Water, Church of Sumter, South Carolina, and thanks again for listening. This lesson is going to be dedicated to a dear friend. Her name is Ruth of Baltimore, Maryland, and she keeps me on my toes and encourages me to continue in the work of the Lord. This is not about stage, it's not about fame, it's about giving back that Christ has installed in me and doing what I can do, doing my part in the body. So it's not about just being in the four walls of the building and refreshing the saints only, but if the Lord give me the opportunity to reach somebody else, whether saved or unsaved or whatever state they may be in, I just want to be a blessing to the people. So thank you, Ruth, for encouraging me to continue in the work. God bless you. And today we're going to be talking about Ruth. And because of the time constraints, what I did was just try to write out a format and some of the things that God has given me in the scripture. So a lot of times I'm going to be looking down and trying to stick to that because I want to keep things in a 15-minute constraints for you scholars and the elders and those out there. We're not going real deep. I know it's so much more you can get into, but we want to touch some points of these women that are in the scriptures and just show some applicable concepts and just share them. Peradventure they may strengthen, encourage, and enlighten and warn other women. So pray for me, elders and scholars that are out there viewing. And again, today we're going to be talking about Ruth, and I encourage you to read the entire book. It's only 4 chapters, so read the entire book, and you can understand exactly what I'm talking about and get a little bit more out of it. And the topic is going to be "Forsaking All," with a subtopic: "Entering into my rightful inheritance." Again, forsaking all, entering into my rightful inheritance. And Ruth, her name alone means friendship, and it means refresh. Just like my friend Ruth, refresh me. It means refresh as with water. It means comrade. It means companion. And what happened, we just a little background history. Elimelech brought his family, his wife, Naomi, and his sons, Mahlon and Chilion, into the land of the Moabites because there was famine in the land. They came from Bethlehem, Judah. And when they got to the land a little thereafter, Elimelech had died. And so his sons were there with his wife, Naomi, of course, and they end up taking daughters of the land of Moab. And they took Ruth the Moabitess and also Orpah the Moabitess to wife. Mahlon took Ruth and Chilion took Orpah. And after 10 years, both of Naomi's sons had died. And I found it just a little bit interesting that their names actually were interpreted as sickly, with the exception of Chilion. His name represented both sickly and annihilation. And I thought that to be very interesting. So you scholars, maybe there's a lot more you want to get out of it and, dig a little deeper. But we're going to try to stick with Ruth. Naomi, we will talk about next week, Lord willing. Naomi wanted to return to the land of Bethlehem, Judah, because she had heard that the Lord's hand was upon the land and that there was bread in the land again. So she wanted to turn there. And she gave both of her daughters an opportunity to stay in the land of Moab and not return with her because she felt like her sons were gone. She had nothing to offer them. She was poor, and she gave them an opportunity because she loved them to stay in the land, and continue as they were before being introduced to herself and her culture and her family. And we're going to talk about Ruth's response. But with that, let's remember a couple of things that, as I stated before, Ruth was a Moabitess. Ruth was, the Moabites, they're descendants of Lot. The Moabites were idol worshippers. They worshiped false gods, of course. In times past, they were not even allowed into the congregation, according to Deuteronomy chapter 23 and verse number 3. And the Moabites formerly tried to curse the children of Israel because they feared them. Remember, they sent the prophet Balaam in, who was also, he was a prophet, yet he also worked in divination. Now that's a lesson of its own right there all by itself, but we're not going to touch it. But Ruth did some things. She forsook her culture, her religion, her family, and her land. I mean, everything that pertained to her life. She forsook everything to follow Naomi. And Naomi, at this point, told both Ruth and Orpah, she said, just go ahead back. Go ahead back to what you were doing, to your idols and, to your things, because I'm going back to the land of my people. And that was culture shock for them, not to mention it was culture shock, just experience they had with Ruth, but their mother, pardon me, Naomi, but evidently Ruth saw something in Naomi. She sometimes what people see in you are the manifestation or the only manifestation of God, of Christ. They see it in your love. They see it in your dedication. They see it in you. So make sure that you're living a life that reflects that of your God. Because whether you attempt to or not, the life that you live is going to reflect ultimately, as I stated before, who's your daddy and whose you are. So let's strive to live a life, women of God, and women in general, that of one that reflects that of Proverbs 31, that virtuous woman. Let us live a life that reflects the love of Christ. But when Ruth gave them Naomi gave them the option to turn back after she said it the second time, Orpah, her daughter-in-law, went to her and kissed her, and went back to the things that she knew. She went back to religion as she knew it. She went back to her land. But Ruth's response to Naomi was a little bit more. And we're going to read that. You'll find it in the book of Ruth, of course. And let's start at 15. And this is Naomi talking to Ruth at first. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whetherest thou go, I will go, and whetherest thou lodge, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Wherefore, that where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death would depart me and thee. And when she saw, talk about Naomi, that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, speaking of Ruth, then she left speaking unto her, and they both went on. But some very important things happened. Ruth emphatically announced to Naomi, she said, Don't make me leave you. My love for you is real. I've gained something from you. I've come into a knowledge of God because of you. Please don't make me leave you. She says, wherever you go, she said, I'm going to go. And she said, wherever you lodge, wherever you stand, rather it's in the street, in a shelter, I'm just putting it in modern day vernacular, whether you're in the ivory tower, it's not about money, it's not about fame, but it's about the God that I see dwelling on the inside of you. You have shown me your God. You have shown me your culture. You have shown me your people, and I've heard of your blessings, and I want what you got. I'm going to cling on to you like Elisha did Elijah. So she said, your people are going to be my people. Yeah, I know I came from the land of Moab. Yeah, I know we were idol worshippers and stuff. But from now on, I'll be named among your people. I know that I'm a Gentile, but this story speaks of not only the redemption of Ruth and Naomi both, but the redemption of Christ and the redemption of the Gentiles. But again, we're not going to get too far off track. She says, thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God, El Elyon, God of all gods. He's going to be my God. I'm not turning back to idols. I'm not turning back to where I came from, but I'm going to follow after you because you're chasing after God, and I'm chasing after the God in you, and I'm chasing after God, and I'm chasing after you. So she says, where you die, that's where I'm going to die. And that's also where I'm going to be buried. And then she said, the Lord do so to me and more. Also, if anything but death keeps me from following after you, nothing but death is going to keep me from coming after you and after your God and following after your customs and your people. And guess what Ruth did? Ruth forsook all to go ahead and to follow after Naomi. Now, there's a law. It's called the law of the kinsman redeemer. And you can go look at that. I'm not going to get into it. You can look at that from Leviticus chapter 25 and verse 5. If somebody came into poverty, and there's a law of redemption when it comes to death and raising up seed. So just look at that. There's a law of the kinsman redeemer. Now, if it was said that, like, if the male died, the kinsman was to raise up seed, or if they came into poverty and their lands and possession was sold, as Elimelech's was and Naomi's was, that the next kinsman can come in and take over. And Ruth, she just went in, she followed Naomi. They were in a threshing floor, and I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to speed through it, but I want you to go ahead and just go back and read it for yourself. Ruth reaped the blessing of dedication and commitment. Ruth, their kinsman, Naomi's kinsman redeemer, was Boaz. There was another in line, but the Lord worked that out emphatically. And she did exactly what Naomi told her to do, according to the customs of the Jewish laws and the women. She did exactly what she said do. Went into the threshing floor, uncovered his feet, laid at his feet. Boaz got up. Go back and read the story. But let's look at Boaz's response. And again, Ruth, the 3rd chapter, verses 10 and verse 11. And he said, this is Boaz talking to Ruth, blessed be thou, O Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, rather rich or poor. And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city is my people, doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. So his response. Now let's go back. Time is almost up. Let's look at the people's response. Now what happened? Boaz went to the next in line, the next of the kinsmen, talked to him and said, you got to get the land and stuff, but you also have to take Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, to raise her up. And he didn't want Ruth. So Boaz ended up redeeming the land and redeeming Ruth and raising up that name for the family. Now let's go to chapter 4. Let's look at verse 11. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come in thine house like Rachel and Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let her house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. And with time almost being up, that's another story too, with Tamar in Judah. And we'll talk about that at another date. But the thing is that the people of the land, they bless Ruth. When you give up all and you follow God, don't think it's in vain, because you had to leave some things behind. You had to leave some people behind. Family tripped on you. Don't think it's all in vain. When you follow after God, he'll bless you. God gave her favor with both God and with man. And note that out of the loins of Ruth came Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David. And this is whom out of their lions came Jesus Christ. So out of this Moabitess, out of this woman that came up out of idol worshiping, came our Savior. So don't give up. Time is running out. Don't give up. Don't worry about where you came from. But if you follow God, he'll make you a new creature. Behold, old things are passed away and all things are become new. If you give up anything for Christ, he will reward you, not only in the world to come, but also in this world. Be blessed. Be blessed. And let's take example of Ruth. And let's follow hard after God. Let's not give up on him. And in the end, your riches will return. It'll come in more abundance than what you even had in the beginning. God bless you. God keep you, and don't forget to read the story